Marc Lamont destroys Ish.
They brought scientists in to say that black people were inferior to white people.
The science that you're talking about, phrenology, which is the sort of early. Am I wrong? Did I say something wrong?
No, you're saying a whole bunch of words to say Ish. You're right. They did have scientists that came in and said a bunch of bullshit.
Can I respond? Because you said to let you finish, and then you started rolling your eyes and turning red. Phrenology was not a science. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying a bunch of words to say you're right. I'm saying a bunch of words to saying you're misrepresenting the history of this. I actually know a lot about this. Can I finish?
We can have this conversation.
No, hold on.
We can have this conversation.
You say you don't like to get cut off.
I don't want to do it on the camera.
That's fine, but you said your whole thing, and then I said 3 words. You come in and say I'm saying too many words. I keep calling your bluff, and then when I say why, you go, you got it, and then when I go back.
Yeah, everybody's talking about how Marc Lamont has been exposing Ish and making him look utterly stupid. Over the last 6-7 months, Marc Lamont has wrecked the fabric of the Joe Budden podcast, but he's done so in an entertaining way by thoughtfully provoking a lot of his co-hosts and coming off like an intellectual version of Joe Budden. He often challenges and prods his co-hosts, and they don't see it coming because he's an academic and he knows all the tactics to disarm these podcast members who only know how to broadcast because they were Joe Budden's friends. With 20 years of experience, he knows the ins and outs, how to segue out of conversations, and he has greatly exposed Ish the most. And that is because Ish is argumentative. And before Marc Lamont's arrival, it wasn't hard for Ish to win arguments. But boy, has that changed. And let's break it down. Ish is kind of a conservative in thought. He tends to take the most conservative approach to, let's say, the gender wars or even scientific discoveries. He questions them, and he doesn't provide much information outside of feelings, anecdotal information, and just getting loud. Well, enter Marc Lamont, who has a lot more knowledge, who actually knows how to debate people, and he thoroughly exposed how little information Ish really knew. I mean, he had Ish Googling on his phone, desperate for a lifeline, and it got so bad that Ish was ridiculed by Mark for the way he was walking around avoiding conversation. And another telltale sign that Ish knows Marc Lamont is cooking him is every time he wants to leave the room. There's been a couple times on the Joe Budden podcast where they're about to argue or debate, and he just wants to roll out of there on his little rolly thing now that he's injured. And it looks absolutely crazy because prior to Marc Lamont Hill's arrival, he was down to argue with everybody, whether it be Ice, whether it be Melissa Ford, whether it be Joe Budden. And another thing Marc Lamont Hill did after the argument with Ish was he made some weird statement that seemed to rub it in, even though I don't think it was his full intention. And he would say, in my recent exchange with my brother Ish, he asked why the United States hasn't been back to the moon since in the first landing. In my response, I said, for what purpose? It may appear that I agree with the claim itself. Of course, I don't agree. It simply isn't true. The country has made 42 trips as recently as 3 years ago. In the moment, it wasn't initially clear to me that he was claiming we hadn't returned at all. I thought he meant we hadn't returned for a partially type of mission. Watching it on replay, I understand it more clearly. As an educator, I want to be sure not to spread misinformation, even unwittingly. Anyway, it was a dope convo. Ish is a super smart and great debater, and honestly, he reads more widely than many of my academic colleagues. Even though we disagree on this issue, it's always a good time going back and forth. Now, Marc Lamont Hill revealed a lot of things. First of all, he's not anybody's friend enough to not try to make them even look more stupid. I would have thought Marc Lamont Hill would have kept the gun in the holster and not shoot again with this statement. He's basically saying, yo, Ish looks so stupid that he made me seem slightly stupid that I have to make a public statement distancing myself from this jackassery. On top of that, he revealed something also that was very key. He said he watched it on the replay. And this is one of Marc Lamont Hill's greatest attributes. He watches every episode over. He probably watches episodes twice. And he might even be studying the rest of the cast members. I'm sure it's not all negative. I'm sure sometimes he's trying to see how to fit in. Which is why, on a recent episode, when Flip was saying, oh, y'all be cutting me off. You know what Marc Lamont Hill said? He said, oh, why don't you watch and see how often you cut people off? He said that because he knows Flip cuts people off. He wasn't speaking from his feeling and anecdotal instances of clashing with other members of the cast. It's over, guys. It's time. Ish Ice, Flip Parks, it's over. You guys are throwing in the towel. You letting Marc Lamont completely take over the show. Just bend over, let it happen, and just go on with your day because none of you care. None of you care. The only time you're going to get the show back is if Marc Lamont gets offered some deal by the Black Effect or something. These guys need to throw in the towel because they're not putting in the work to accurately go back at Marc Lamont Hill. Now, it seems to me the only people who really have an issue with Marc Lamont is people that disagree with him ideologically. Like they may be more neoliberal or, they are conservative in ways that clash. These are the people that, probably rock with a lot of what Candace Owens says. And I think ideologically you can disagree with Marc Lamont Hill and some of the statements he's made. But as far as just a bird's eye view of the podcast, I don't see how anyone can dispute he is really good at this in ways that the other cast is not. And it's not so much that he is just better. He's more of a professional, which is why the difference is so stark, right? In basketball, there's tons of guys that aren't as good as LeBron James. But then there's guys who hit the gym, practice their jump shot. They're more professional. So that way, when they play with LeBron, they get to fill in the spots that maybe he doesn't know. Flip, he doesn't really practice. He just shows up and gets loud. Ice and Ish, they just show up. They don't really practice. They don't live, breathe podcasting. I think that's what Joe wants. But then again, Joe also wants that family-like chemistry feel that isn't really real anyway. So maybe he does prefer that. But let me know what you think about the clash between Ish and Marc Lamont Hill. Like I said in a previous video, I know Ish looks incredibly stupid. I still think he's a big part of the equation. Like, Marc Lamont wouldn't go viral without these arguments, without the presence of Ish. So Ish still has great value. The value just comes in him looking stupid. All right, y'all. That's my video about this subject. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. Tap in with my Patreon. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.